When the most powerful man in the world said the U.S. should take over Gaza and that Palestinians would leave, the United Nations said that, quote, any forced displacement of people is tantamount to ethnic cleansing. Donald Trump's comments drew condemnation from the international community and mockery from comedians. Late-night host Jimmy Kimmel Live created this fictional ad.
Hello, everyone. It's time to take this country back from Sleepy Joe and make America great again. First, we're going to build a big, beautiful beachfront resort on the ancestral homeland of the Palestinian people who will be sent far, far away.
U.S. Democrats, Western governments, Arab nations, rights organizations condemning the proposal, many calling it ethnic cleansing. Hundreds of U.S. rabbis and Jewish celebrities were signatories to this advertisement in the New York Times saying no to ethnic cleansing. You might think the American press would have had a field day earlier this month after Trump made those comments, but it did not call a spade a spade. Here's The Daily Show.
The password is ethnic cleansing.
This is a brazen proposal. Trump argued Palestinians have no choice but to leave Gaza altogether, suggesting a permanent relocation.
It is a breathtakingly audacious proposal here.
I think President Trump here is opening up the aperture on the set of solutions.
He puts some very bold, fresh, new ideas out on the table.
I see it more as a beginning of the dialogue.
What President Trump is talking about is working with Israel in order to clean Gaza up.
Well, what the press failed to say on air or in ink was spilled online. Historian and author Asel Rad compiled headlines from the Washington Post, CNN, Associated Press, and Reuters, and then said, quote, dear Western media, it's called ethnic cleansing, not relocate, transfer, move, or clear out. Let's bring in our guests. Journalist Arno Pedram, co-founder of AJAR, an anti-racist journalist organization. Hello to you. Across from him, Tom Fenton, the head of France 24's English channel, my boss, I should say. Also, Kethevane Gorjestani, France 24's own foreign editor and former White House correspondent. Arno, first question to you, perhaps the most toughest one. Why wasn't the American media using that term ethnic cleansing?
I think people get caught up in Trump's theatrics. Like, I mean, we all kind of, our first reaction was to laugh at what he was saying. And there's a bit of taking Trump not seriously and a bit of a lack of questioning and contextualizing of what these things mean. They're crimes against humanity. And so in these moments, like, we lose the game that Trump is playing by sort of taking his speech and posing it as a question to the entire nation. Would we consider a crime against humanity, and what would be the benefits of this forced displacement?
Tom, ethnic cleansing, a very loaded term. Why is it so loaded?
Well, it's very loaded. Well, ethnic cleansing is a euphemism. It's the forcible removal of a people, but at the same time, there's no legal definition of the term ethnic cleansing. Neither is there an international law against ethnic cleansing, although it's mentioned a lot, and perhaps there will be in the future. As a result, lines are often blurred between people mistaking ethnic cleansing with genocide, which is the elimination of a people. So as a result, what you're getting in a lot of the English-speaking press is, well, they avoid using it directly. I'll give you an example. The AP Style book, the latest edition, it says, AP does not use the term ethnic cleansing on its own. They must be enclosed in quotation marks, attributed and explained. Do not use the term as a keyword or in headlines. So you can quote somebody, you can attribute it, you need to explain it, but they don't say it outright.
Right. So it has a lot of moral weight, but legally it's very ambiguous, and perhaps the things that are done to carry out ethnic cleansing are crimes, but ethnic cleansing in and of itself is not yet defined as a crime. What are your observations to how U.S. media have used the term historically?
Well, historically, the term ethnic cleansing really started being used in the 1990s during the Yugoslav civil wars, the breakup of Yugoslavia. And I remember being there, covering it. I particularly remember having that debate in Macedonia on the border with Kosovo and seeing the thousands of refugees cross the border, we were having a debate, should we be calling it ethnic cleansing? And we held off for a while, but once I saw it happen, once I saw those thousands of refugees crossing the border, I had no problem using it.
Kethevane, the White House told the Associated Press that if it didn't align its editorial standards with Trump's executive order renaming the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America, it would be barred from an event in the Oval Office. The reporter eventually barred from attending an executive signing order. We've seen Trump exert a lot of pressure on media companies. The fact that ethnic cleansing was not mentioned in some of these reports, that might be playing into his hands. Down the road, do you think that any media companies in the U.S. might end up yielding to this pressure and perhaps push his narrative and policies rather than providing more critical reporting?
I think, yes, in a way, but I think the ethnic cleansing example is different. I think in that case, it's more of a case of maybe self-censorship rather than responding to pressure from the Trump White House or the Trump administration. And I think that the legal aspect of it and the fact that you were talking about the distinction with the Anglo-Saxon press, especially the American press, they're very touchy on legal terms. And the fact that ethnic cleansing doesn't have the sort of a very clear-cut legal outline might be part of the reason why they're being so careful about using it, because there is in the Geneva Convention the mention of ethnic cleansing, but there are some caveats, and those caveats might be where the issue lies, because there is a caveat about how this forcible movement needs to be because there might be military reasons or vital reasons for removing that population. So that could be one of the options.
Yeah, some criticism, not just of the U.S. press, also here in France. TF1 has the nation's most watched nightly news program. Here's how they segued into the topic.
Est-ce une folie ou une idée révolutionnaire qui pourrait changer le cours de l'histoire? Donald Trump veut donc que les États-Unis s'emparent de la bande de Gaza, dévastée par 15 mois de guerre. Il souhaite transformer ce territoire surpeuplé en Riviera paisible et prospère. Mais auparavant, il faudrait déplacer toute la population civile vers d'autres pays.
Meanwhile, France Info, a reputable channel with excellent journalists, had this lamentable segment where instead of inviting, say, a human rights lawyer on, they got someone from the tourism industry. Take a look.
On va accueillir Franck Delvaux. Bonsoir.
Bonsoir.
Vous êtes président de l'Union des métiers et des industries de l'hôtellerie d'Île-de-France. La bande de Gaza en Riviera, est-ce que ça a du sens pour le professionnel du tourisme que vous êtes? La bande de Gaza a des atouts, on l'a déjà dit.
Oui, alors déjà, on peut être satisfait que le président Trump prend l'exemple de la France, de la Riviera, puisque ça vous permet de rappeler qu'on est la première destination mondiale en termes de tourisme.
France Info apologized for that segment, deleted the video, still prompted the satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo to say, quote, maybe he could have informed us about the winemaking potential in the trenches of the Donbass region in Ukraine. Needless to say, it's been a tough few weeks at France Info during the ceasefire's exchange of Israeli hostages for Palestinian prisoners. The channel used this chyron, or strap, mistakenly referring to the freed Palestinians as hostages and not prisoners. Tom, on Thursday, the news director of France Télévisions gave an exclusive interview to Le Figaro newspaper. He was instructed to make sure these types of editorial mistakes do not happen again. He said there were certain concrete measures being put in place. One of them, double verification of those chyrons, and also trying to modify the newsroom's organization to ensure more exchanges of how to treat topics. Those 2 points, though, sound like something that most newsrooms should already be doing.
Yes, no, they should. No, absolutely, they should all be doing that. This is also a question of terrible bad taste, and it may be shocking here in France, but sadly, perhaps not so. You see a lot of that in the U.S., but the news channels tend to have become more talk channels. In fact, the success of Fox News was basically taking the talk news radio format and putting it on the air. It's a lot cheaper to do talk. It's a lot cheaper to get 4 people around a table talking about issues than it is to go to Sudan and come back with a 2-minute piece.
With original content, yeah.
With original content that's a lot more expensive.
We'll get to that in a second. I just want to, Arno, about this. How should they handle it? The editor at France Info volunteered to be suspended. Bosses didn't want to do that. They're weighing what to do next. There's a vote of no confidence vote taking place at France Info at the moment. Results expected momentarily. What should the channel do?
I mean, for me, the combination of those two events is a bit maybe not the right way to see this. I think that the Chiron problem is very different from the show. I do believe that the Chiron was like an honest mistake, and I know from working in the same position as a producer on TV show how that works. And they've explained that it was an honest mistake. But the show is different because it's something that a lot of people approved. They organized it. They booked people. So for me, this calls for like a more serious sanction of just not respecting like some kind of standards of how we should be covering things such as forced displacement, and not try to think of like the economic benefit of something that's defined under the ICC as a crime against humanity.
Kethevane, one of the unions at France Info said, due to a lack of resources, we have to fill the air with debate so we can end up talking about anything, any old how, journalistically, ethically. It's deeply deplorable and totally inexcusable. This touches on what Tom was saying earlier about the talk show format. And I think if you have people on air for an extended amount of time, the chances of something in terms of bad taste happening only increases.
I agree, but in this case, yes, there's a lot of criticism about what that guest was saying, but the major problem and mistake was inviting him. He was in his role
preparing it and organizing the segment to happen.
And that is the thing. The problem is not so much what the guest was saying, but the first person who had the idea, let's call someone who manages hotels to talk about the Gaza Strip as a Riviera. That is where the mistake happened, not so much what he was saying. So I think this questioning of the talk show format is legitimate, but in this specific case, I think it was more a chain of command that was the problem, because nobody from the boss who decided, the person who had the idea in the first place, the people who booked the guest, nobody at any point said, maybe not the greatest idea.
And I'm wondering about the consequences. Arno, you're familiar with the Overton window, the concept that political viability of an idea depends mainly on whether it falls within an acceptability range. This range is fluid. When we see news channels talk about sensitive subjects in this way, does that worryingly move some things that would have been viewed as deplorable closer to acceptable?
Yeah, we use wrong terms, and we just like it's a way of falsifying reality. We don't realize what we're talking about, and we manage to segment things. We manage to just omit all of the devastation, the potential genocide, the mass displacement, and the horrors that would come with the mass displacement. This is all cast aside. Let's just look at all the benefits for us tourists who would spend some holidays in Gaza.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank our guests, Arno, Kethevane, and Tom. Thank you very much. I wish we had more time to discuss this further. But that brings us to our quote of the week, and it comes from the president of the Foundation for Middle East Peace. On X, Laura Friedman said, yes, this is a real New York Times headline referring to Trump's plan to ethnically cleanse the Gaza Strip, a crime against humanity, and turn it into for-profit real estate project as a Gaza redevelopment plan. For anyone asking what, quote, manufacturing consent means, this is Exhibit A. That's it for this edition of Scoop. Thank you for watching, and please stay tuned to France 24.